We have another NHL trade to talk about today. This one's between the Buffalo Sabres and the New York Islanders. We also have other news, including a waiver claim. We have more details on the Eichel trade that went down and some things that were taking place behind the scenes leading up to that. We also have some more updates on the whole Blackhawks scandal with Kyle Beach, an update from the NHLPA, as well as USA Hockey, and some more details in that regard. So we'll discuss all that coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have another trade and lots of other news to talk about here today. First up, let's get into the details of this trade. The New York Islanders have traded Johnny Boychuk to the Buffalo Sabres for future consideration. So you're probably wondering, why did they do this? Well, it's quite simple. This actually is a deal that helps both teams. If you follow the cap-friendly website or Puckpedia or any of those websites that have a lot of details on the salaries and the cap and all the rules, the Buffalo Sabres were technically not at the cap floor today after trading Jack Eichel. Of course, they took back a contract in Alex Tuch, but of course he makes significantly less than Eichel does, so they were under the cap floor. So they had to take on more salary to be cap compliant, and that had to happen before the end of the day. Now, the New York Islanders have Johnny Boychuk, who's never going to play again, and his contract will get them over the hump. Now, this also helps the New York Islanders, and you might be wondering how or why that is as well. So essentially, this contract goes from LTIR with the New York Islanders over to the Buffalo Sabres. They will not need to use any long-term injury cap relief. He'll go on regular injured reserve with the Buffalo Sabres so that he counts against their salary cap, so they're cap compliant. And also with the New York Islanders, this gets them out of long-term injury, and they can put them back into a regular cap situation where they can begin to accrue cap space that they can use near the NHL trade deadline. So they're now, they were cap compliant before with the Islanders, but now they're cap compliant, but under the cap with that contract being gone. So they're not above. So when you're in LTI and you're using that long-term relief, you're not accruing cap space throughout the year that you can use for deadline acquisition. So that's why you saw teams like Tampa add more LTI contracts near the end. Was the only way they could expand that pool of money, because they weren't accruing anything throughout the year if they were in it all season. So this helps the Islanders be able to do a better job at adding to their team down the road. We know that Lou Lamoriello definitely would like to add ideally a top 4D or a potential top 6 forward. At least one of those two items is on his wish list. They've been linked to Vladimir Tarasenko. They've been linked to guys like Lindholm and Anaheim for the blue line. Hard to say exactly what goes down or what they're able to do, but it will help them create a better situation going into the deadline, that they can make a better addition and add rather than be a little bit more handcuffed in that regard. And it gets the Sabres to the floor. So it's a win-win from both sides. Now, as I mentioned, we do have several other news items to talk about today. First up, we had a waiver claim. The Devils have placed goalie Scott Wedgewood on waivers. He was claimed by Arizona. He's played with the Coyotes before, so he gets claimed, goes down to Arizona. We'll see how he does down there. He should be able to probably get more playing time instead of being considered the number 3 with the Devils organization. I'm sure the Devils aren't overly thrilled. He was a nice insurance piece there, while Blackwood and Bernier have been dealing with different things through the year, but he is unfortunately now a member of the Arizona Coyotes. Now, when it comes to the whole Kyle Beach Chicago Blackhawks scandal, a couple more updates regarding that. One, the NHLPA, of course, we know had a meeting regarding hosting an investigation around how the PA handled everything. So a lot of this is going to be focused on Don Fair, who's the head of the PA, representing the players. So they voted in favor of that. So now that's confirmed. So that investigation will be kicking off here shortly. And a lot of that, like I said, is going to be focused on how the situation was handled. And I would assume that the future of Don Fair as head of the Players Association is very much going to be at the forefront here. And wouldn't be shocking if they try to remove him and go in a different direction here. We've heard names like maybe Matthew Schneider as being a potential guy to take over should they go down that road, but we'll see. Now, another update as well regarding this whole thing. I saw some more information from Rick West, head of TSN, who's been the main investigative journalist on this story from the get-go, which is really been the main cause of getting it a lot more mainstream attention and really drawing a lot more attention here to it by the league. But according to information here we have on Brad Aldrich, he had worked with USA Hockey. We know that on multiple occasions. Apparently he had worked with USA Hockey in 2008 at a summer camp in the state of New York with approximately 100 hockey players that attended this camp. And there was I'm not sure the full details, but it sounds like it was like an overnight type of hockey camp where the players stayed in a dormitory type setting. Of course, the coaches were staying there as well. And of course, Brad Aldrich is there. So now the thing that gets me is now USA Hockey is scrambling to contact those families to advise that those kids were spending time with a convicted sex offender. Now, I don't know if anything happened back then. Nothing's been reported, but maybe something could have happened and the person hasn't spoken up. We don't really know anything like that. Maybe it didn't happen. We can't really say or speculate if anything did, but it's their duty. I think it's the right thing to do to notify them. But what gets me is Brad Aldrich has been convicted of the situation in Michigan for 7 years. So why did they wait so long? When he was convicted then, they should have said, oh, geez, this guy's worked with our program, been around a lot of our kids. We should probably say something. No, they only do it now when there's pressure on them from media, like people like Rick Westhead, to advise and to try to make things better for the future. So another situation where, unfortunately, things were handled poorly. But hopefully nothing else happened that we find out about. But you never know. Like I said, this is not going to be the end of the scenario that we keep hearing about. There's bound to be more people, whether it's directly as a result of Aldrich or other people like him that have been, doing bad things. The people are going to be more brave by seeing this to speak up, and get some justice. So we'll see what happens here. But ultimately, that's a situation that really shouldn't have happened. But, back in 2008, they had no reason to know. At least I don't think they did. But it's shameful that they're taking all this time, even though the guy was convicted 7 years ago, to make an effort to let everybody know what those kids may have been subjected to. Now, of course, on to some other news. The last thing I really want to talk about here is just a little bit more details on the whole Eichel situation. Of course, I know many people are happy that the whole Eichel sweepstakes has finally come to an end. It feels like it's been a topic we've been talking about off and on for way too long. But of course, as we know, this was a complicated process, and sometimes these big trades can take a really long time to happen. But we did learn a few things. Eichel did a pretty in-depth interview with Elliotte Friedman. He also did some other media appearances today. And one thing that we learned is that he actually made a trade request before anybody ever knew. Obviously, we learned about Eichel requesting a trade after last season, but he actually requested a trade for the first time in the previous offseason. He confirms this in his interview with Friedman, saying that he was not happy with the direction of the team. Looked like they were heading down another rebuild. He's a competitor. He wants to win. He was not really thrilled with where things were going. So he went and met with management and said, why don't you trade me? If you're going to be going down a rebuild, use me to get a bunch of younger picks and prospects as assets back, and I can go play somewhere else. I don't really know that I want to be part of a rebuild, but they obviously didn't do that. And he said things didn't go over very well. And that's kind of what put the writing on the wall, so to speak, that it had a major impact on the relationship moving forward. But he said really, of course, the next offseason, though, they did some more moves to really make it look like they were not necessarily going down that road. And once Kevin Adams took over, he signed Taylor Hall, did some other things, so he's like, okay, he seemed to be okay to give it another chance, but then obviously the whole debacle with the injury and where things were going again, he basically just had enough, which isn't really a huge surprise. He talked about other teams that he thought he might have been traded to at some point where it was getting close. So he did reference teams like Colorado and Minnesota in this interview. So clearly they've been referenced as teams that were, in the mix at different points in time. So now we can confirm they definitely were. We heard from different insiders, including Elliotte Friedman, that the Calgary Flames were definitely in it right till the end, and as were the Carolina Hurricanes. The Hurricanes were a team we never really talked about a whole lot, but the Hurricanes were a team that he said never really got real close, but they were kind of staying in the mix, just, I guess, probably in case the price changed, or maybe in case they saw an opportunity and maybe swoop in at the last second. They were never really, all that close. And he even says that Calgary was never super close. It sounds like the Flames and that whole Matthew Tkachuk rumor was definitely false. Now, of course, but keep in mind what happens here. Sometimes a lot of these people that are insiders with reports like this, they're given information that they trust from good sources, but sometimes those sources can get information from teams that are misleading because it's all a negotiating tactic, right? You got to remember that. For example, the whole Matthew Tkachuk and the Flames, like I trust Kevin Weeks is a good source. He's the one that put it out there, and I would suggest that whoever told him that is a source that he trusts as well. But how do we know that that source wasn't fed information that came more from Buffalo's side of things to try to get the Golden Knights to up their offer at the last minute, to put some pressure on them? As obviously we knew that a Vegas-Buffalo deal was getting close, and maybe they just want to put a little pressure on them to kind of up the ante a little bit. That wouldn't be surprising at all to see. According to what we've heard, though, the Flames offer was mostly picks and prospects, with likely their 3 top prospects being on the table. If there was any roster players involved, it doesn't sound like it was Matthew Tkachuk. There are some that are saying that Sean Monahan was on the table, and I've seen others that say that none of the core players were on the table, that it was strictly picks and prospects based, but you'd have to think they'd have money going out somewhere. So I'm not sure of the exact details. It makes sense that Monahan would be included, but I guess we'll probably never know anything further than that on that front. But obviously, this deal was certainly well complicated. We also saw word that the Arizona Coyotes were certainly involved as well, not to acquire Jack Eichel, but to be a third-party broker to take on some of his salary in order to get some extra assets in return. There was conversations that they've had. Even Kevin Adams said that at some point in time, throughout the whole process, he's talked about everybody in the league. Just about. It's like there wasn't too many teams that didn't at least make an inquiry, which really, like I said before, when I get comments saying, oh, you've had them going to all these teams. Yeah, you know what? In a situation like this where it drags on so long and a player of this magnitude, they're going to be available. And a lot of teams are going to be inquiring. Like, it's not often you get that opportunity to make a trade for this kind of player. So clearly, like I said, we've learned a lot. I'm sure we'll probably get some more details here yet again. So just interesting to know what was going on behind the scenes here leading up to this. Of course, one other quick note as well, Chase Prisky of the Florida Panthers is making his debut tonight, and he will be the first player to play with the Panthers that was born in the state of Florida. So their first local kid making his debut tonight, so we want to wish him luck. Hope everything goes well. One other quick fun fact for you as well, just a little bit of a trivial thing, but I thought it was interesting. In the past year, we've seen 4 number 2 overall picks from recent drafts be traded, including 2014, 15, 16, and 17. So will that trend continue with the more recent number 2 overall picks being traded in the next year or so? It's just interesting. We saw Sam Reinhart, Jack Eichel, Patrick Laine, and Nolan Patrick, 4 consecutive number 2 overall picks be moved. And the other thing that's interesting here is that 2 of these players were traded from Buffalo. 2 of these players were traded to Vegas. So just a little tidbit there for you to end the video. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.